In this video, I'm going to show you how to film and edit the 4 basic change of speed effects, which are slow-mo, fast forward, reverse, and frame hold. All right, so the first change of speed effect is slow motion. The key to filming stuff in slow motion is to have a high frame rate. So 60 frames per second, 120, 240 frames per second if your camera has it, which most don't. And if we go by the 180 shutter rule, then your shutter speed should actually be double your frame rate. So film at 60 frames per second, then have your shutter speed at 1/120, and so on. Having said that, you can also do something called over cranking. So if you film at 60 frames per second, you can still over crank your shutter speed to 1/240 or 1/400, and you'll get a slightly different look. Either way, the higher the frame rate, the slower and smoother your slow motion can be. The trade-off is that most cameras can only record higher frame rates at lower resolutions, i.e. in 1080 and not 4K.
Now, in order to edit the best looking slow motion footage, the key thing to understand is that it's just a relationship between the time base of your sequence and the frame rate that you filmed at. So in order to determine your time base, all you have to do is go up to sequence, and under sequence settings, you'll find time base right here. So mine is 29.97 frames per second or 30 frames per second. The other main one that people use is this one right here, 23.976 or 24 frames per second. As far as your frame rate goes, you can find it in your project bin listed beside each clip. So these 2 clips right here were filmed at 24 frames per second, where these ones were filmed at 60 frames per second. Now that we understand these numbers, we're going to use them to determine the optimum slow motion speed that we can make any clip. All you have to do is divide the time base by the frame rate. That'll give you a decimal, which you're going to convert into a percentage that gives you your optimum slow motion speed. Just be aware that if you use a percentage lower than that to make your clip even slower, you're likely to make your footage look jittery or maybe introduce unwanted artifacts, depending on the settings you choose, which I'll show you a little bit later. Okay, so there's actually 4 different ways that you can make your footage slow motion in Premiere Pro. The first way is to interpret your footage. All this means is that Premiere is going to automatically convert all of your clips, regardless of frame rate, into their optimum slow motion speed. So if you don't want to do all the math that I just showed you, then this is a good method, but only choose this one if you know you're going to have the footage play at slow-mo for the entirety of the clip. If you want some of it to be at regular speed, or if you want it to be even slower, then don't use this method, because it's actually going to change the frame rate right here and the duration of the clip right in your project files. So to interpret footage, all you have to do is select all the clips that you want to interpret. So anything that has a faster frame rate than your time base. Just take note, this one's 29.97, so 30 frames per second, and it's a 15-second clip. This one's 60 frames per second, and it's also a 15-second clip. Now all you have to do is right-click, go up to Modify, over to Interpret Footage, and then just click this, assume this frame rate, and change it to the desired time base, so 23.976 in this case, and then just go down and hit OK. You'll notice that all of them that I selected were changed to 23.976 to match the time base, and the duration has changed. This one went from 15 to 18, this one up to 37. But just remember, only use this method if you want it to play at this exact speed for the whole clip. And to be honest, I never use it. The second and most convenient way to put something in slow motion is just to right click and go up to speed/duration, or go Command or Control R. That'll bring up the clip speed/duration window where you can change speed and duration right here. So let's take a look at speed right here. Right now, this clip is at 100%. It's 6 seconds long. We can see it at 6 seconds right here. If I change speed to something simple like 50%, at half the speed, the duration of the clip doubled to now 12 seconds. If I click OK, we can see it happen down here too. So now it's at 12 seconds. And if I play it, it's going to be in slow motion for both video and the audio. If you want to approach it from the duration side, like let's say you need your clip to be 10 seconds. So this is hours, minutes, seconds, and frames right here. So if you wanted 10 seconds, you can just go in here and put in 10 seconds, and then it's going to change the speed to match. If we click OK, we can see that it goes to exactly 10 seconds. If you don't want these things to change together, so let's say you want your clip at 50%, but you also want it to be 6 seconds, you don't want it to change from this length, then just unclick this chain, then put it in at 50%. You can see the time didn't change. Now when we click OK, it's going to make this slow motion, but it's going to keep it at 6 seconds. Down here, these two things are pretty obvious. If you click this one and OK, your clip is just going to play backwards in reverse. Whereas this one right here is going to try and maintain the audio pitch of the clip. You're going to hear it tries to make it sound
go fast,
like it normally would with the proper pitch. I think it's terrible. Now, before I explain ripple edit shifting trailing clips, I want you to take note that if you put something in slow motion, but you have a trailing clip after it, it's going to get blocked. So the duration says over 12 seconds, almost 13 seconds here. But when I click OK, the video is going to get blocked because there's a clip in the way. But you can see the audio went the full distance. But now when I click ripple edit shifting trailing clips and click OK, it's going to move everything that was after it down to make space for this new clip. One scenario where this comes in handy is when you only want part of your clip to be in slow-mo and the rest to be in regular speed. To do this, just move your playhead to where you want the slow-mo to begin, then use your razor tool to slice your clip at that point. Then find the spot where you want the slow-mo to end or where you want it to kick back into regular speed, slice again, go back to your selection tool, and then right-click, go into speed/duration, select your speed. So I'm going to go 25% this time, and then make sure to click ripple edit shifting trailing clips. Click OK, and you can see it moves the rest of the clip over. So now when we watch it, it goes to slow-mo here and then back to regular speed. And then there's time interpolation, which only becomes a factor when you make your footage slower than the optimum slow motion rate. Because when you slow a clip too much, you essentially stretch it out beyond the frames you have available. For example, slowing a 30 frames per second clip down to 50% speed. This creates gaps between the original frames, meaning Premiere now has to figure out how to fill in the spaces where there are frames that are missing. Unlike a clip that was filmed with a higher frame rate that even when stretched out, still has enough frames to fill in each spot of the chosen time base. But just know that Premiere has 3 different options for applying time interpolation, starting with the default setting, which is frame sampling. This is where Premiere duplicates existing frames in order to fill in the gap, which typically results in jittery or choppy footage. The second option is frame blending, where now Premiere adds a crossfade between the frames to fill in the gap, which generally causes a ghosting effect. Last but not least, there's optical flow. This is where Premiere uses the information and details in the surrounding frames in order to predict or artificially create new frames. The problem is this can often produce unwanted digital artifacts. The main thing to note here is that optical flow will struggle with fast-moving subjects, very detailed backgrounds, and or low contrast images. So in order to get the most out of the effect, make sure to film in higher resolutions like 4K, with an overcrank shutter speed like 1/250, and especially with faster frame rates like 60 frames per second or faster. Just know that if you select frame blending or optical flow, when you go to preview your clip, it's going to look the same as frame sampling. It's going to look all jittery. That's because you have to render it first. So just click on your clip, go up to sequence, down to render selection. Then once it's done rendering, you'll be able to preview it properly. The third way to make something slow motion is to use the rate stretch tool. So right now I'm on my selection tool. If I click on the ripple edit tool, left click and hold it, you can see the rate stretch tool is right here. You can also, if you're clicked on something, just hit R on your keyboard and that'll give you your rate stretch tool. You're going to use this one if you just want to fill in gaps. So let's say you have this clip right there and you're like, I don't really care how slow this clip is. I just need it to be this exact duration. Well, then you just go to the edge of the clip, click, and stretch it out. And then you can see it's going to change it right there to 66.55%, and that just fills in the gap. But just know that if you stretch your clip out really far and make it really slow so that it's maybe choppy in the playback, all you have to do is go back into speed/duration. You can see your speed right there, and mess with time interpolation as you see fit to see if you can make it look any better. The fourth option for slow motion in Premiere is time remapping or speed ramping. But since this is a great way to mix slow motion with fast forward, I'm going to explain it after the fast forward section, which is next.
Next, we're going to look at how to film and edit something in fast forward. Now, for fast forward, you can just take any footage, crank it into 200, 300, 400, 500%, and just let it go. It'll be fine. But the ones that look the best are ones that are either one of two things: something that is complete or something that will repeat. So by complete, I mean, like let's say you're building like a sandcastle. When it's done, it's complete. For repeat, that's something like, let's say, traffic, where the cars keep going through an intersection or whatever, and when you put in fast forward, you can just see them zipping by and forward and whatever. But short little bursts of fast forward are really cool too.
Now, unlike editing slow motion video, where there are many aspects to consider, as we are essentially stretching clips out and creating gaps between frames, editing fast forward video is much simpler, because now we actually have an excess of frames, where only, for example, every second frame might be used if the clip is adjusted to 200%, or maybe even every 10th frame if the clip is adjusted to 1000%. So now that we know that, let me show you the 3 different ways to make your clips play in fast forward using Premiere Pro, starting with the rate stretch tool, which, surprise, surprise, can be found within your tools over here. Now, you might not see it though, so you have to hover over this one right here, the Ripple Edit tool, left click and hold, and you'll see this other drop down, and then you can find rate stretch tool right there. But you can also, if you're selected on your selection tool, you can also just hit R on your keyboard and it'll pop up as well. Now, the rate stretch tool is very easy to use. You just go to the edge of a clip, either at the end or at the start, and you'll see it'll switch to this little symbol right here. And all you have to do is click and then shrink your clip down, and that'll make it faster. And you can see right here, this clip, when I did that, changed to 209.88%. So the shorter you go, the faster it's going to be. And then you can also go the other way and stretch it out further to make it slower than 100%, which means slow motion. So if I cram this into, let's say, 171%, we can see that it'll adjust the video and the audio to be faster. And if I go even quicker, it'll keep all the frames still, but the video and audio will be even faster. And just so you know, it doesn't matter if you rate stretch from the start of your clip or from the end. Either way, it's just going to crunch it down and make your clip faster. Unlike if you're using your selection tool and you trim from the start, it's going to cut off the start. And if you trim from the end, it's going to cut off the end. All right, so when do you actually use the rate stretch tool? Well, I use it for any time that I want to make a clip fast forward or slow-mo, and I don't really care about the exact percentage that it ends up at, and or when I want to cram it into a gap between 2 clips. So for this one, for example, this is the clip that I was rate stretching before. In this situation, I'm going to bring it up to this level and then down to this layer, and I'm going to slide it over and match it up. I want this whole clip. But now when I hit the rate stretch tool, I can go to the end and I can just squeeze it into that gap. It'll make it whatever percentage that it made sense to squeeze it in there. So in this case, it was 215.19%. And then I can just go back to my selection tool and move it back into place. But just so you know, you can make even more refined adjustments if you go Command or Control R, and that'll bring up the clip speed / duration window, which is actually the second method that we're going to talk about for making something fast forward in Premiere. And just so you know, you can also access that menu by selecting a clip, right-clicking on it, and going up to speed / duration. This menu obviously gives us the ability to change a clip's speed and or its duration. So take note of this clip. At 100%, it's 4 seconds and 26 frames. So this is hours, minutes, seconds, and frames. So anything that I make lower than 100% will be slow motion, and anything higher will be fast forward. And you're going to use this option instead of the rate stretch tool if you want to select an exact percentage. So for example, if I want to go 200%, notice that automatically the time changed to 2 seconds and 13 frames, which is half of the duration that it was before. Because the faster you make it, the shorter the clip is going to be. So when I click OK, take note down here what happens. It's going to be cut in half. And once again, if I play it, the video and the audio is going to be fast forward. You can also adjust the clip from the duration side of things as well. So if you click in here and you want to make it, let's say 3 seconds, for example, and then put 0 frames, note what happens to speed up here. When I click away, it changes it to 162.22%. to match this duration. When I click OK, you can see that one shortens as well, just not as much as the last one. But if you want, you can also adjust these so they're exclusive from each other by simply clicking this chain. So now they're not linked to each other. Notice now when I put in 200%, the duration is going to stay at 4 seconds and 26 frames, and it didn't jump down to 2 seconds like it did before. But if you notice down here, OK is gone. That's because at 200%, this clip is actually not long enough to make it 4 seconds. So I'm gonna try 150 and see what happens. Yeah, so now I can keep it at 4 seconds and 26 frames, click OK, and it's gonna keep it at that duration, but it's gonna make it faster. It just had to extend the clip a little bit over here. To show you the rest of these things, I'm gonna activate the chain, and I'm just gonna jump this to 200%, and then go down here and I'm gonna click on this, reverse speed. So obviously if you click that, it's gonna play fast, but it's gonna be in reverse now. This one right here will try to maintain the clip's audio pitch to make it sound like it originally did.
Wow, good jump.
Wow, good jump.
But most of the time it sounds pretty bad and tinny. And then last but not least, there's ripple edit shifting trailing clips, which only comes into play when you are changing the speed or duration of your clip and there's other clips that are after it on your sequence. So notice the difference between whether I have it checked or not. So when it's unchecked and I click OK, the clip is going to go to 200% and it's going to be half as long, but now it's going to leave a gap. It's not going to affect anything else on the timeline. So now you have to fill that in with whatever other clips, move things around, or maybe even go back to your selection tool and try and stretch out your clip to fill in the gap. Just don't use your rate stretch tool, because if you use that and stretch it out, now it's going to be back to 100%, if you can notice right there. On the other hand, if I now click ripple edit shifting trailing clips and then click OK, watch what happens to these clips over here. Click OK. It's going to do the same thing, go to 200%, half as long, but it moved all the clips that were after it on the timeline over to fill in that gap. You might also use ripple edit shifting trailing clips if you only want part of your clip to be in fast forward as well. To do that, just move your playhead to where you want it to start being fast forward, use your razor tool to slice, find the spot where you want it to end being in fast forward and go back to normal speed. So let's say there, slice again, go back to your selection tool, click on the middle section, right click, go to speed/duration, change it to whatever speed you want. So let's go 400%, and then make sure to click ripple edit shifting trailing clips. If you don't and click OK, you're gonna leave this gap and you gotta move this clip over. But if you do check it and click OK, it's gonna automatically move it over. Now your clip's gonna go regular speed, fast forward, and then back to regular speed.
Oh, and I'll also show you how to do speed ramping or time remapping as well, which is basically a gradual transition into slow-mo or fast forward instead of an abrupt one. And it's a cool way to use both slow-mo and fast forward together during action sequences. Let's take a look.
For time remapping, I'd start by expanding the layer that your video is on by hovering over this little line right here, clicking and sliding it up. This gives you more room to work with on your clip. Then just right click on this little effects thing in the top corner, go to time remapping and change it to speed. That'll put a white line right down the middle here, and that's where we're gonna put our keyframes to change our speed throughout the clip. Now you can do that in two ways. You can either click on your clip and then add keyframes right here. So you'd go to where you want the slow-mo to start, for example, so right there, and you could click a keyframe to add that in right there. Or you can hold Command or Control and click on the white line. Either way, it's gonna add these little bracket things that you see right here. And this is how we're gonna control the transition from one speed to the next. What these lines have done is actually separated this clip into different speed sections. So what I'm gonna do is just change the speed of this middle section right here. So to do that, all I have to do is hover till I see this little up and down arrow thing, click, and then slide down to go slow-mo and slide up to make it go faster. So I'm gonna slide it down. You can see it's already expanding to make the clip longer, or this section longer. And I'm gonna go down to about 20%. If I zoom out a little bit, you can see that the video expanded to be slower, but the thing that sucks about this effect is that the audio does not transition with it. So if I play this, it's gonna go regular speed to slow-mo here for the video, but the audio is still playing regular. And then when it goes back to regular, it's gonna be off right there. Now I'm gonna show you how to kind of fix that later, but for now I'm just gonna mute the audio because it doesn't matter for anything we're doing right now. Okay, so to manipulate the transitions, all you have to do is separate these little bracket things, because right now it's just going from regular speed and abruptly changing to slow-mo. But we don't want that. We want a gradual transition. So what you do is you click on a bracket and just slide it so you separate them. So you make this ramp now. So in this case, it would go regular speed and then slowly transition into slow motion here. But you can also change how this works as well by just clicking on one of the brackets. You get these little handles and you can pivot this to now make it more of a ramp. So it's going to go regular speed and then slowly start to transition, then go fast into slow-mo and then gradually drift into the speed that you want. I would suggest at this point you watch your clip so you can see how that transition happens. If you want it to be slower, then just expand these out, either both of them or one of them, to change where the transition happens. Or you click on a bracket and you might want to change how the transition is happening by pivoting these handles. But just know that you can add as many of these in as you want. So maybe I can add another one right here, expand this one out, and maybe I put this in, fast forward. Maybe I go here, add another one, crank this way down to 1% so it expands out, and you can, mess with those. So now if we watch this, we go from slow-mo, ramps up to regular speed, goes really fast, and then boom, into one last slow motion. And once again, you can still mess with time interpolation. This time, just right click and go right here to time interpolation and pick the one that you think best fits your footage. As for fixing the audio, it's kind of annoying, but it is doable. So all I would suggest is going one transition at a time using your razor tool. I'd lock the video and then just slice right there and change it to the speed that the slow-mo part was. So if I go on here and right click and go to speed/duration, this section was 20%. I'm going to click OK. Then just go back to your razor tool, slice at the next transition, and then go back into speed duration and put it to whatever the speed for that section is, and just keep going one section at a time. Then I would just make sure to go over to effects and go into audio transitions, into crossfades, and I just drag a constant power on these to help the audio kind of transitions.
The third change of speed effect is reverse, and you just got to think of it in the same way that we did for fast forward. So you can put anything in reverse, but when you're filming something on purpose to put in reverse, then put a little thought into it. To me, the best reverse videos are ones that are basically like a chemical change or a physical change happens, essentially showing something that may otherwise be impossible. It could even be just something as simple as eating a cookie. So in regular motion, you eat it, the cookie's gone, but in reverse, oh, the cookie comes out of your mouth and it's whole again.
And just so you know, when I talk about putting a little thought into it, I mean things like this. So in reverse, this clip looks like my son's just waving his hand back and forth, and boom, a sandcastle is made. But if we look at how I filmed it, if I go back to the start of this clip and we watch it in regular order, so not in reverse, you can see that I start by having his hands presenting the castle, because that's going to be the last thing that you see. And then when I push play, I had him, just go through and destroy the castle, wipe on the ground to kind of clear the area, and then he's going to get up and walk out backwards. So you see at the end here, he got up and walked out backwards. That's regular motion. So now when we watch it in reverse, he's going to walk in forwards. So that's what it looks like. Then he's going to wipe his hand across and build that sandcastle. And at the very end, he's going to present with his hands to be like, look, I'm done. One other thing to consider is things in your background. So even though this shot looks good, if I watch it in reverse here, my son takes this broken stick and repairs it, and he's like, yeah. So this is what I would have started with if we go in reverse of the reverse. So I started by filming him kind of cheering, like, yeah, look, I fixed this stick. And you go in reverse, and then he broke it. But what I didn't notice when I was filming this is these people walking. So if somebody is walking forwards, when you put the clip in reverse, it kind of ruins the effect, because now they're walking backwards, kind of making people go, oh, this is just a reverse clip. Now, as far as editing goes, putting something in reverse is actually very simple. All you have to do is right click on the clip that you want to put in reverse, go up to speed/duration, and click on this little box right here, reverse speed, and click OK. Now you can see that the water is going back out into the ocean instead of coming at us. But let me show you a couple other things too. If you notice, if we right click and go back into speed duration, you can see slow-mo and fast forward up here. So if we increase this speed to 200%, we can obviously make the reverse go really fast. And if we right click, go into speed duration and change this to 50% as an example, you can see that the reverse is now in slow-mo. But if I undo everything I've done so far, so now the clip is playing in the normal direction that it started, I'm gonna also show you how to do the boomerang effect where it goes forward and then whoop, and then boomerangs backwards. So for that, all you have to do is find the spot that you want the clip to start going in reverse, then go to the end of the clip. So you have this red like arrow thing, trim it right down, then just hold Alt, click on your clip and drag it out. So now you have a copy, and then now just apply the reverse to the second half here. So I'm gonna right click, go up to speed/duration, reverse speed, click OK. Now when we watch it, it's gonna go forward up till this point and then boomerang backwards. And just so you know, any clip that you put in reverse, especially ones that are in slow motion or fast forward, can be really hard for your computer to play back. If that's the case, I'm gonna show you two things that you can do. There's other things, but I'm gonna show you two. You can go right here and click this little drop down and change the playback to 1/4 or 1/8 quality instead of on full. That might help. But the best thing to do would be to go to the start of where your clip is and hit I on the keyboard to put an in point. Go to the end, or at least past the end, hit O to mark out. That'll create an in and an out point, like a range right there. Then just go up to sequence and down to render into out. Click on that. This window is going to come up. It might take some time to render your clip, but you'll see this yellow line right here, or maybe yours is red. That'll eventually turn to green when this is done, and then it'll be easier for your computer to play the clip back.
And last but not least, we have frame hold, which is basically the exact same as slow-mo. You want to use a high frame rate, probably want to overcrank for sure in this case. You have as many frames to choose from as possible when somebody does their action that you want to freeze.
Okay, so before I show you how to do the freeze frame or frame hold effect in Premiere, let me first show you why it's important to overcrank your shutter speed in order to get the best results for this effect. So if I go frame by frame here, I'm gonna click frame by frame. You can see why it's important that you overcrank. You can see this one, as soon as there's movement in the thing that's moving that you wanna freeze, it starts to blur. Whereas these ones, the detail in the moving subject is kept a lot more clear. So what that means is that you have a lot more choices in what frame you're gonna pick to freeze. All right, so to edit a frame hold, all you have to do is move your playhead to where you want the action to freeze. So I'm gonna freeze it right there. And like I just showed you, you probably wanna take a spot where everything is clear and you can see everything and not where the action is blurred. Once you have your playhead set, all you have to do is right click, and then you're gonna pick between these two things. I'm gonna show you both. This one here, add frame hold. When you click it, it adds a frame hold. If I move this out, you can see it split the clip right here. This is still the regular clip, and then right at that spot, it's gonna hold. And that adds this hold for however long your clip was. So my clip was to there, so it just added it for the rest. You can extend it still, like you can extend these, but for the initial adding of the hold, it'll be exactly for the duration of the clip. One thing you'll notice with this method, if I unmute the audio from the clip, is that the audio from the clip will keep playing underneath even when it's frozen. So if you don't want the audio, then just lock the video layer and shrink the audio down so that it stops right when the frame hold happens. If I move this back and then undo, if we right click again, this other one here, insert frame hold segment, if we click that one, boom, you're gonna see that it adds a chunk of a segment here as a hold, and then the rest of the clip will continue to play over on this end. But if you notice down here, I had a song underneath. It's gonna split the song or anything else. You have text up here, it's gonna split it at that point as well. So my suggestion, if I undo this and zoom in here again, all that you're gonna do is lock anything else. So I'm gonna lock this song so it doesn't get split. I'm gonna find my spot again, so right there, right click, insert frame hold segment, and now when you see, it's gonna add this segment right here, and now I can unlock the song and extend the song for the duration. If you wanna change the length of this hold, all you have to do is hold Command or Control, go to the end of your clip so you have this yellow arrow thing pointing left, click, and you can shorten it. So let's say you wanted to match it up with this like little song bit right here. then you can go there and boom, and match that up right there. And obviously if you want to lengthen it, just do the exact same thing. Hold Command or Control, get the yellow arrow thing pointing left, click, and extend it out however long you want. So now let me unmute the music and the audio from the clip so you can hear what that sounds like too. The third option for a frame hold, again, find your spot that you want to freeze, is to go right up here to this little camera thing. It's export frame. So you can go click on that. This is going to come up. I'm going to just call this jump frame. It's going to save it as a PNG. Keep it like that. Then you want to make sure in the path that you save it where you want it. So go to Browse and pick the folder that you want. I'm just going to go to my desktop for now and select that folder so you can see it changes there. And then make sure this is selected. Import into project. So make sure that's checked off and then click OK. That's going to import the image right here into your project that you can now drag in. And what you're going to want to do is line it up where your playhead was, because that's the frame that you took as the image. I'm just going to shrink this down. And then basically what you're going to want to do is use your razor tool right here to split your clip and move it down, and then, make the image frame hold here the length that you want. Now, why would you use this method instead of just adding a frame hold segment, which was much easier? Well, you would use this one if you want to edit this image, because it's an exported image. If you wanted to edit it in Photoshop or something and then bring it back in. So let me show you that quick. So as you can see, I have the exported frame opened up in Photoshop. So now I can do whatever I want to it. So I'm just going to go to, let's say, filters here, and I don't know, whatever this is, just leave that on, click OK. So maybe you wanted to do that effect to your image. Now all you have to do is export it, go back into Premiere, and then import that image back in. So jump frame B here is what I saved it as. And then now, instead of that exact same jump frame image, we can have this edited version instead. So it'll look like this. Bing and boom. For other Premiere Pro tutorials, make sure to check out the videos linked in the description below or on the screen right now.